life in 3 dimensions got me bent and got me twisted. I know I done said a lot, but I should probably stop pretending. I don't really hold the key and I can't really push a button. I just step up to the mic and try my very best to bust it, but I ran out of breath. It's tight in my chest, my feet just might fail. I can't stand the pressure.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Racially Speaking, where we have real and honest conversations about race as it's viewed through the lenses of faith, family, and vocation. As always, I'm your host, David Phipps, and I really mean it. We are back. That's right. I'm rejoined by the social justice cowboy himself, John Mark Walker.
What's up, y'all?
John Mark, welcome back, man.
It's good to be back. It's been a minute. I'm glad to be back.
Yes.
Trying to make it work.
Yes.
Happy to see your face. Happy to have conversations with you. Yeah, it's good to be back.
I get the privilege of talking to many of our listeners throughout my week, like off and on, and they miss you, man. You're missed.
Oh, that's sweet. I miss you guys too.
Yeah. All right, so we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants tonight,
Yeah.
and I'm excited for it. We had a last minute cancellation of a scheduled guest that we will, of course, bring back, and we're rescheduling that as we speak. But man, we're gonna use this time. We're gonna capitalize. We're professional here. We're gonna capitalize off this time, not waste a moment that we have scheduled, and we're gonna jump into something fun. John Mark, we have come prepared for a time such as this with a I don't know what the right word is, but a back pocket list of listener questions that we're going to just jump right into.
Yeah.
I'm excited about this.
Back pocket list is a good thing. You got to save
list.
something like this, for a rainy day, right? You got to have a backup plan.
Yeah.
And I think this is a very good backup plan.
Absolutely.
Answering the questions that, everyone out there is thinking and asking and would want to be discussed. Like for those of us this whole podcast is about having conversations with your friends about race, culture, ethnicity, right? And I think there's a lot of people who don't have friends they can ask these questions to, friends of color at least. And so I think there's a lot of questions out there that they would like to be answered, and I think we can answer them. So I think this is a good time to just answer some questions that we've gotten that we could, hopefully help everyone who's listening to us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think you said it perfectly. We go back and forth with one, and we're still very early on in this and even the existence of this podcast, but I think, John Mark, you'd agree, we want this to be a place that is helpful and informative. And I know we go back and forth with just having a conversation that people are listening in on versus always giving advice or that Q&A type feel of, okay, this is how you do and fix stuff. We're not necessarily going to lay into how you fix stuff, but I think it's helpful to also be willing to answer questions, because what we don't want is people to just listen and never feel like we're helping. I think hopefully
Absolutely.
that is what we're able to do a little bit tonight. I think these questions, like we said, are listener submitted, but they also are pretty broad. And I think, John Mark, you'd also agree these are questions that you and I have come across multiple times, probably all of them multiple times and regularly.
Yeah, I think they're pretty common.
Lives. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see which one you're going to ask first. We both have the list, but you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. So I'll kick it off with a fun one. What are some subcultures that you fit into that are atypical stereotypes? So not usually expected about someone who looks like you. So like how John Mark's sister is into craft beer, right? So we had that
perfect one.
Call back to an earlier episode. You should listen to it. Kara Walker, my sister, is on it. She's great.
Yeah. The Hoppy Black Lady.
What are some Hoppy Black Lady? That's right. Yeah. Follow her on Instagram. What are some subcultures that you fit into? So this is kind of a personal one. What are some subcultures that you fit into, David, that people that are not typically associated with your ethnicity?
Right. People that have known me for a long time will know that I'm probably going to go here, but the thing that comes to my mind is people are always surprised to hear that I grew up playing ice hockey. I don't know if at this point it sounds it sounds a little presumptuous that I say I fit into the culture because I haven't played in 10, 12 years.
Right.
But man, that we talk about basketball on here a lot. And that's kind of my go-to sport of choice right now as a fan, and if I ever have time playing it. But if I'm honest, ice hockey is who I am. If I got to pick something that I've grown up knowing, it's the sport I know.
You love it. You love it.
It's not even that I love it. It's just I gotta be real. It's what I grew up doing. It feels like it's in my blood. It's what I know the most about by far. Wow. So I would say I'd still fit right in. And I love how around here, because the Washington Capitals are so popular, they're kind of...
we got to go to a game together. You got to take me to one.
Yeah, they won.
And tell me about this sport, because I don't appreciate it, but I would love to see it the way you see it.
Well, the Capitals won the Cup fairly recently.
They
did. So I love, being around all the, I say bandwagon, newer hockey fans, and I'm kind of the old guy sitting in the corner being like, oh, you guys don't even know, man. You guys don't even know.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That is a great answer. So growing up outside of DC, I got to go to some Capitals games.
Okay.
I remember a handful, like with youth group and things.
Well, here's the deep cut is I grew up in Norfolk, and the professional hockey team there was, it's still the Admirals, I'm pretty sure, but they were 2 steps below the East. They're in the East Coast Hockey League. So it's like AA if you connect baseball more, but 2 steps below the NHL, and they were the farm team for the Capitals.
Oh, nice.
So I grew up watching all the guys that ended up on the Capitals down the road.
That's cool.
Ole the goalie, Olaf Kolzig, I don't know if you know who that is. He played in Norfolk and then was a big deal for the Capitals.
That's cool though.
Yeah, I won't bore you, but so that's kind of, my tie to even the Capitals. With the sentiment of, oh, you guys don't even know about the Capitals. Like, I know about the Capitals because I grew up watching them when they were in the minors.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would love to be able to see hockey through your eyes. I would appreciate it more if I did. So I would answer this question: subculture that I'm into, that I think, I don't know if it breaks stereotypes, but I've noticed, I guess in these latter years of my life, I'm only 35, so I'm, just recently, the past 10 years, I've noticed that a lot of Black people like anime. And I don't know, when me and my brother were into it back in the day, I just thought it was something that we liked, but I didn't realize that there is like this subculture of Black anime fans. And it's so funny. I was locked out of, I wasn't locked out. My neighbor was locked out of his car. And my neighborhood is pretty mixed. Most of my surrounding neighbors are Black. But he has kind of really helped clean up the neighborhood. There was a lot of drugs in the neighborhood. And he's this really big, like, football playing Black dude, like really intimidating if you, and I think it's okay to say that because of his size. You know what I mean? Like he's like, he's such a great neighbor to have. I feel so comfortable leaving my family knowing that he's there. He's just the bouncer of the neighborhood. So he's told me stories about people he's chased off of his away from his house. But we were locked out, and of his car, we were trying to get in. I was like getting every piece of metal and stick that I could get. And he comes out with his brother's samurai sword because his brother's into anime.
Oh, no way.
His brother that's really into anime, right? So in my 20s, finding a community of Black people who are also into anime and like, Dragon Ball Z, like that and stuff like that. Has been really cool. Like I didn't know that my brother and I weren't alone, and now I see it even more that we're not alone. And so anime, I would say one like that. I'm not like super into it, but I definitely am a fan. And I don't know if that is a typical stereotype people associate. So,
well, I think from the outside looking in, I got 2 things on that. So like, I feel like you're like an OG nerd. I think it's fair to say you refer yourself as a nerd. So I feel like it is a little cooler nowadays to be into stuff like anime. And so like I feel you were already there. So I feel like you naturally you're
So you're saying I'm a trendsetter, people followed me.
Yeah. I was gonna say you're grandfathered in, but you are the grandfather. in this instance. So
honestly, this is what I think it is. I don't know where stereotypes come from, and a lot of times they're harmful, but people like good things, right? So if you have this stereotype in your mind about, particular ethnicity, whatever, don't be surprised when you hear that they like read something or listen to something or watch something that is just good, is just in general high quality, good storytelling, good music, good something. Don't be surprised, because people like good things. So let that information, like everybody from every culture likes good something, let that affect your stereotypes, right? So there are a lot of good anime shows, and anime has grown in the past 30, 20, 10 years. So so I like anime. My favorite of all time is Avatar: The Last Airbender, which some would say doesn't count because it's American anime, but I just think it's a really good show.
I keep hearing that's amazing.
You got to watch it. You have to. It's on Netflix. You got to watch it.
I keep hearing that's amazing. I do.
I keep telling you stuff you got to watch. So you have a lot of stuff.
Oh, I mean, I feel like I start there every episode, even if you're not on here, but I'll make this short. We started Loki. We finished WandaVision.
Nice.
So we're making our way, man. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Okay. Good.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah. It's good stuff. We liked them
Loki's
all.
fun.
Like we haven't.
Yeah.
I mean, I still maintain there was nothing. We didn't think anything negative about Marvel. Just had fallen behind, and we loved it. We've loved the whole journey.
I'm glad you're enjoying it. There's a lot of stuff out there, and they just keep cranking it out.
Right. Last thing on stereotypes, even is it not more stereotypical for the Asian person on the show to maybe fit the affinity for anime? So we're breaking stereotypes, man.
We're breaking stereotypes over here. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
So next question, you want me to ask it, or you want to
ask?
Yeah,
no, you go for it.
All right, I'll keep rolling. So how do you respond to this? So this is what it says. How do you respond when creators tell other cultural stories, but do it poorly or ignorantly? So there's this whole concept of like, there's this question out there, who gets to tell whose story?
Yeah.
So there's this book that I think of recently. It's called American Dirt. And it was Oprah Winfrey's book club, one of her books. Okay. So she always picks good books. And I read it. It's a good story. But the author of the story, so it's about, let me back up. It's about, I think Mexican woman and her son who are immigrating to America. They're seeking asylum in America, and they're fleeing from a cartel. I believe that's the premise. I think it's Mexico. That's what I'm going to say. But it was written by a woman who is of a Cuban descent, and I think only half Cuban. So she grew up, I think, in New York, and is part American, but also Cuban ancestry. So the question is that her story to tell? And so this question is what do you do when you encounter somebody who should be telling somebody else's story culturally? How do you respond to that?
Man, that's an incredible question.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I mean, I have a lot of thoughts, and I feel like that's a great question because I feel like there's a lot of nuance in it. But with the example you just used, whoever the author is of that book, I just feel like the reason for why someone is telling a story matters, and that is usually fairly obvious to the people it's most affecting.
Yeah, that's good.
If that makes sense. So
that does make sense.
You said she's half Cuban, telling a story about the Mexican community. Sounds
I'm wrong. She might be full Cuban, but I just remember hearing that she grew up. She is not Mexican. I know that much.
I guess it would matter to me what her upbringing is or what she identifies with most. And so, and it also, I mean, I think first and foremost matters what the community she's speaking about thinks about it. Cause I think that matters more than anything. Cause
I think that matters too.
If they're down with it, then, and I mean, really, truly down with it. Not like, hey, no, Native Americans never really thought the name Redskins was racist. So like not like that. I mean, actually,
like you find like 3 Native Americans and they say we're cool with it. Like, like there's a consensus in the Mexican American or Mexican in general communities of approval of a book like that. Yeah, that's what we'd be looking for.
And I mean, we could go down a huge rabbit hole with authors and publications, and there's plenty of stories that are told by, I think, people outside the community, and it's done really well. I think, I won't lie, I feel like this question comes up naturally probably when it's about communities of people of color. Yes. I mean, it's a fantastic question. One thing, did you ever watch the miniseries Little Fires Everywhere on Hulu?
I have not.
It's also a book. It's got Reese Witherspoon, Kerry Washington, and I forget who else is in it. It is phenomenal.
Okay.
It's hard to even describe, but they deal with so many different, they deal with race. They deal with so many different tensions, class. It's multi-generational. Like they deal with like high school age issues, single mothering. Just there's so much. It's kind of a thriller as well on how it's shot. Cool. It's also a book, but the author of the book I think she's Asian. I wanted to say Chinese, but I'm not sure. And there is a little bit of there's a minor Asian character and storyline in the series, but nowhere close to the prominent storyline. But I remember finding out that she was Asian, and I thought it was interesting. Yes, I mean, I was interested to see how that's interesting how she told the story, but from my perspective, it did actually kind of make sense that she was able to tell the story. Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't like she was telling a story that was 100% about the Black community or something. It was. Right. So that might not be the best example. Like it was about race in general, but I think it matters, and I think it matters what your intention is and what the people who it's most affecting feel about you telling that story.
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, the base of the question is who gets to tell whose story, right? But anytime anyone's writing a novel, fiction, or even telling history, they have to do a lot of research, right? And look into the background, the culture, the events, the context, right?
Yeah.
And so, So I wonder, like, even if I were to tell stories about things that I witnessed and was present for in my life, I'd probably want to interview a lot of people and just get the fullest, biggest picture possible. So I don't know. It's an interesting question. Who gets to tell whose story? I think you're spot on by saying it matters what their intention is, and it matters whoever the closest stakeholder of that identity that is being centered in the story, whoever owns it the most, it matters how they feel and what they think about it too. Whether it's like a story about a historical figure whose family then is like, well, you didn't tell their story well. That's a problem. Like Green Book. You remember that movie, Green Book?
Yeah.
His family, the main character's family, I think they had some issues with how they told that story and how he was portrayed and the perspective of it. So that type of thing matters, right? But I also don't want to say no one can ever tell anyone's story because then a lot of stories won't be heard, right? So I think of the book, I think it's Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. It's written by a white woman pre the Civil War. It was right around that era. It was an abolitionist story. And she took the story of this slave girl and she wrote this book, right? And she's white. And so I think her motives were good, right? To help, put out a counter narrative of what people thought about slavery, to help people see the evils of slavery, right? But she was telling her story. So if we go and like blanket statement say, no one who's not of this group can ever tell any story, right? Then we're going to miss out on a lot of good stuff that can come. And I feel like going back to the book that I mentioned before, American Dirt, I feel like I learned a ton. I feel like it was exposing a lot of an immigrant experience. I don't know how much it's true, but I know my heart was affected. And I'm like, oh, I care for these people who are seeking asylum now. I want them to come and find safety in our country. I don't know where that paints me politically, but I care about them, right? So, and it's largely affected because of this book that the woman wrote. So, yeah. So that's all I can say. I mean, it matters your intent. It matters how it's received by the closest audience to the central of the book, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from a personal standpoint, I'm South Korean. I don't being adopted and growing up in the States, I don't identify with South Korean culture. I'm not ashamed of it or anything like that. It's just my story that's not really what I was even able to do. Like, it's fully identify with the culture I was born, not even into, but born in, but then was not raised in. So, I mean, people's stories matter on, like you said, like the intent of where they're coming from. So, like, I have way more in common, in my opinion, in a lot of ways, with the bigger parts of my story. Like, I have way more in common with other adult adoptees, regardless of race, than really I do with a lot of people that I share the same ethnicity and race with. So there's some nuance there. So like in the circles we run in, I have a good amount of friends who are also adopted. Not a lot, but I've actually met more and more in these last few years than I ever have before. But then we have a lot of our friends have adopted children, all different races. And so anyway, that is in the circles we run in, which are largely Christian, largely evangelical Christian circles. Adoption, foster care, and stuff like that is a big topic and big thing that surrounds us. It comes up all the time.
There's a high value of it, yeah.
Right. Other than my experience, I don't consider myself an expert by any means, but I'm naturally skeptical is not the right word, but would have my guard up around how those stories are presented, like corporately, from like Christians in general, of what fostering and adoption looks like, because I'm the product of being adopted. And so I have literally personal views as, even I have friends that are learning how to even navigate that reality. And so it's just really cool. But I say all that to mean like I identify with those kind of stories way more than I would identify with someone growing up in South Korean culture. So I feel like that
makes sense.
Kind of informs this question a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I'm suburban Black, so so that's its own thing, its own story.
I've never heard it sound like that.
And, so I'm from the suburbs, so I listen to Taylor Swift. So I'll move on. Next question. Sound good? So what would you say to someone who has learned and is growing in their awareness and realizes that there are things in their past that are cultural things that are past that I don't think they like. So things like cultural appropriation and microaggressions, like Halloween costumes and racial joking, mispronunciation of names, calling people by the wrong name, like confusing people for other people of the same race, things like that. So what would you say to someone who has learned and is growing in their awareness and realize they have things like that in their past?
I think my gut reaction is to move on, and that might be surprising, but move on in a sense of, if you're learning, which is part of the question.
Yeah.
I would never tell someone to dwell on the past and feel guilty and paralyzed by the past, but learn from it, I think, and move on. Like, it's not helpful to me or people of color to dwell on the past and not move forward because you feel bad. So we've I think loosely unpacked that several times on here. But with the caveat, if you know there's something that would be worth addressing between you and somebody that you just know has informed your relationship with somebody or multiple somebodies, that was hurtful, that's worth apologizing for. I've had a handful of conversations with people that either I've apologized, I'm like, we're not above this, or it's somebody's apologized to me. And usually, I feel like most people don't not like being apologized to. So, it's great. It goes well, but it's not always, sometimes it's unnecessary. That's my opinion. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good opinion. I agree. I think apologize when you need to. And if it's appropriate, like if there's a relationship that, you realize, oh man, I did that, and that probably isn't great. Like, I think it's okay to apologize. But I also don't think you need to like beat yourself up and hold on to it. Because everybody who is growing in cultural awareness and understanding will realize silly things they've done in the past. And that's just the nature of growth, right? Like, my kids do all kinds of gross potty things that they will grow out of, that I grew out of. If I was still doing them today, people wouldn't want to be around me as an adult male who's acting like a 3-year-old, right? Yeah. But so just like that, like in our past of understanding race, culture, ethnicity, like we've said things, we've made jokes in our past that we are no longer doing because we have matured and understand that those things are inappropriate to do, or unkind, unloving, right? So I say, don't let that weigh you down. Continue in your journey, continue to grow, and apologize as appropriate.
Yeah. I think we'll hit on some of this in a future question down this list. But I will say, I think you can figure it out as you're continuing on your journey of learning, if that makes sense. Like my advice, my little bit of actual advice would be, don't, whether it's out of insecurity or hoping that people don't know, don't act like you are farther along than you are at the same time. Mm-hmm. Like I try and hold myself accountable to that as well. Like if you know that, and don't hold other people accountable to something that you wouldn't want to be held accountable to. Like there are some things, like insensitive things and views I've held in my past that I don't even know how I would go about like remedying that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, and so I think that's okay. But I'm not also going to start being, super public about, how terrible people are that think that way now. You know what I mean? Like, so don't act like you're above something that you're not at the same time. Like,
don't beat on people who are where you were, right?
Right. That's a well put.
Don't look down on others because they haven't grown like you have. Mm-hmm. Give them time and grace like you needed to grow too. Right. I think what you're saying is good. Yeah. So I wanted to highlight something in here though. Halloween is like around the corner.
Yeah,
right.
It is.
So like, what are the problematic costumes going to be this year? Isn't there always one? Like
Man,
who are we going to dress up?
I don't even know what I'm going to be. Do you know what you're going to be?
No.
Do you not reveal it?
No, I don't even know what my kids are going to be.
Okay.
I always come up with something, but I haven't put much thought into it. But I was trying to think like what Disney movie came out. Encanto. Yeah. You think people will dress up as the characters from Encanto?
Yeah, I don't know. Is that problematic? Well, my kids are being Lilo and Stitch.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh gosh, I can't wait to see those pictures.
So aren't characters...
so that's what I'm thinking. Are characters problematic? What are your thoughts on that? If you dress up as a person from another race, is that cultural appropriation?
See, we should have had our guy Dylan didn't come on to talk about this, but I don't know, because I feel like Disney is different, and then you're the superhero guy. So Ollie dressed up as Black Panther one year.
Nice.
And so like I remember, but I remember thinking about it, I'm like, I think that's fine, but I'm not, for some reason I'm not positive. Like, is that okay for him to do? And I think the answer was, we arrived at yes. Yeah. I think shout out to Dylan Dent, asked him because he was my go-to superhero guy at that time.
Oh, was he?
And he was like, man, it's fine. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, and I should have known. I mean, he was like, I dress up like, I love superheroes. I dress up as Spider-Man all the time. You know, don't dress up as T'Challa. But like, I don't know. So like, I guess that's not, you know, I would think that's fine. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. With, you know, Disney characters, is that?
Yeah, I think a rule to go by is like, again, it matters intent, right?
Right.
And I think a rule to go by is if you're dressing as a character to honor that character because you love that character, I think I'm saying it's 100% okay. Dress as a character. So if you want to be Moana, dress as Moana. If you want to be any of the girls in Encanto, dress as the girls in Encanto. If you want to be Black Panther, go for it. If you're not Black, go for it. If you want to be Spider-Man, you know, and up until recently, Spider-Man was only Peter Parker, and now we have Miles Morales too, who I love. You know, go for it. You can be Peter Parker if you want to, and you're not white. But it's like while you dress up, they're your heroes. You want to honor them. Yeah, absolutely. But if you're dressing up as like just a Polynesian, you know, person, or like an African prince, or like you're wearing a sombrero, like, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Like, that's where it gets to be a problem. We're making a mockery of other people's cultures with our samurai with our Halloween costumes. So you can be creative and dress as a character, but be sensitive and make sure you're not dressing as a culture instead of a character. You're not making a parody of a culture instead of dressing as a character. So yeah.
It's crazy
your
how
son
often
can dress as Black Panther as often as he wants to.
Yeah, that's
Wakanda forever.
That's where nice segue there. That's where I arrived. I mean, yeah, and he loves it. He still has the mask, and he'll throw that on every now and then.
I dressed as Baby Yoda last year, so
nice.
That's got to be whatever Yoda is. Cultural appropriation.
Baby
I guess
Yoda.
I should say Grogu to the Star Wars fan.
Okay,
His name is Grogu
that is completely over my head.
Yeah, I don't want to offend anyone. I know Star Wars fans, you know.
We should take a poll for our audience. Now that we're doing questions, we should take a poll on.
Do you guys like Star Wars?
Yeah, on interest, just interest across the board, because we really go off on some tangents sometimes, and we're like, I don't know who likes
hockey,
this, and this,
Legos,
but we're just gonna do
Star Wars, basketball.
How many subcultures have we ostracized throughout the show?
True. Did I offend you when I talked about Dragon Ball Z?
Yeah.
I know other anime shows. That's not the only one I know. I truly am a fan. Cool.
I can't think. But I can't think of a go-to problematic costume that I'm anticipating, to be honest.
Yeah, me either. Which is good. Maybe that's progress. You know.
Maybe it is.
Grown.
Yeah.
At least our costume stores have progressed.
Yeah.
All right. So this one's kind of fun, right? And I don't know, but you know, I laugh at racist stuff because you got to laugh to keep from crying, right? But this one is a little more subtle. So, how would you handle someone who just gives you weird vibes about your race or ethnicity? So, for an example, and there are other examples. The other day, I was at Starbucks and I was meeting with a friend, and he's Japanese. And we were just sitting talking about life events excitedly, and I could tell that there was this couple, older white couple, sitting not far from us, and I could kind of, how you kind of sense that they're like paying attention a little bit.
I call that the look.
So they're like, I can just tell by their body language or whatever that they're listening. And so as they're about to leave, the man comes over and he says something like, I'm just glad to see that you guys are keeping the peace in Richmond. And it's like, I'm glad to see you're keeping the peace. And then he said, I used to work over in the East End, which is a more less white, more culturally diverse area. I used to work with youth in the East End. So I was like, what are you saying? Like, you see two brown dudes and you're like, you remind me of the kids that I used to work with. So he gave off weird vibes, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't continue much of a conversation. I didn't ask who he worked with. I just said, thank you. And, he left and we kind of smirked and laughed about it on the side.
Okay.
But, weird
going.
Vibes. What do you do when you encounter somebody who gives you weird vibes?
Well, my question would be to you. So, I mean, do how do you feel about how you handled that interaction? Do you regret not saying something? Or I'm asking because I feel like that's kind of the question. Okay.
Yeah, I don't regret not saying anything. Because it was awkward. It was very awkward for us. He interrupted us, but he was like saying kind of nice things. I didn't want to engage and go down a trail to get to a point where I might be more offended, or best case scenario, it ends up being not offensive. But I don't know how he could turn something like that around. So in that moment, I chose not to engage and just continue the good conversation I was having with my friend. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, you said those are subtle interactions. Those are some of my least favorite because I hate that the feeling of I need to handle this perfectly. I take that on and I'm like,
do you?
Dang it, what do I do? And then I'm just angry in my head. I'm not super outwardly angry most of the time, I don't think. But I will then be angry because I'm like, I did nothing to put myself in this situation. You approached me. Right. Now I'm just upset because I want to handle this perfectly. So I will, sometimes do what you didn't say. Okay, thanks, and move on. But then I will tend to go back in my head and think, dang it, man, I should have said something. And I don't know what I would say all the time. I guess it differs. But I find myself sometimes wishing I would have said something to have a teaching moment. Maybe that sounds condescending, I don't know. Or just speak up for myself, because in my head, and this is my pride, for better or for worse, tend to think like, oh, great, now he thinks that that's okay, and he's going to keep doing that. To people.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I just think some people are a lost cause, and like he wasn't coming there asking how to be more culturally sensitive or if he should say anything like that, which I would say, probably not. But there are people listening to this and they're going to know now not to go and say this to people, So I think that's helpful. So talking about it after the fact with other people, I think is helpful. I think I'd rather invest my energies on people who I know want to grow out of those awkward interactions and away from that awkward thinking into more higher intercultural relationships and understanding. So I think that's where I want to invest my time and energy. So I try to let some things, pass, but
I agree.
Yeah.
I think I'm just being honest, and I feel like I wish that is where I think you're right. I think my struggle is maybe not always doing that.
Yeah.
I had a recent interaction in this last week actually, and it was honestly a classic. An older guy at Kate and I were working, and not older guy, like middle-aged guy, kind of came up to me and did the whole, where are you from? And I can see that coming from a mile away. I could see it in his eyes at how at how delighted he was to be talking to an Asian guy. And so
that's terrible.
He said it. So I just, in those situations, I'm well versed. I let them walk it out. And so I'm gonna let them get there and, say it. Hey, yeah. Where are you from? So I say, I'm from Southwest Virginia. I grew up in Norfolk.
Yeah.
And leave space for I know what's coming. No, but where are you from? Like before that, where are you from? So I keep going, and then get to. I was born in South Korea, and they say, "Oh, where?" So I love it when people it's the people that know about the country too. Oh, what part? And they're just like getting enthused. Gosh. So I say, where I was born and stuff. And they start, asking questions, as, getting pumped. And so those interactions, I kind of just, I engage, but I won't lie. Yeah. I engage a little bit coldly because I'm just like, we got to be past these kind of interactions. That's just me. Yeah. I'm like, we got to be past these.
Yeah. Does that weigh on you when you have those interactions? Are they hard? Is it heavy?
I think it's a mix of, it's frustrating, like big picture, because I'm like, surely these are the kind of things that I'm hoping are going to stop happening. Not that racism is going to go away, but like these interactions, like at this level, in my opinion, this like base level, hey, what not to do, to people of color, or people you think, don't look like they're American, which is a whole nother conversation. And what not to do. So that weighs on me big picture, but I think in the small, the mundane, I kind of, like you, resort to laughing it off in my mind. I'm like, I guess, should I be surprised? I don't know. Anyway, I say that to I feel like that's what the question was sort of asking. So it
is. Yeah, that's weird vibes for sure. Yeah. So, I think we could go back and forth and just sling stories about weird vibe interactions. Like we get it around my children's hair, especially my oldest daughter. She has curly hair, and it's not like anybody else's. So it's pretty unique. Like nobody around her in our circles has hair like her. And when she's with my wife, she's pretty light skinned. So people are like, "Oh, where'd she get her hair from?" But nobody asks that question when they see me when I'm with her, right? Nobody's asking me because they figure it out, right away, that she gets her curly hair from me. But like that's weird vibes when people are like, "Oh, her hair it's beautiful. It is beautiful." But like, the typical like, "Oh, I want to touch it. Oh, you're so exotic." Oh, things like that, like weird vibes. Yeah. So yeah, we're trying to figure out, my wife and I are figuring out how to handle it on behalf of our children, right? Because sometimes it's well-meaning weird vibes, like, "Oh, I just want her to know that she's beautiful, or her hair is lovely," and it's like, "Thank you, we got that covered. She will know that," which is okay. Like it's good intention, but it still comes off as weird. And like,
sure,
are you doing that? Are you doing it for all the children, or are you just singling out my half white, half black daughter?
Yeah. Even hearing you unpack that a little bit, I'd love to say to our listeners that I will concede that it's tough to know what to do, even for us on either end, because like I'll concede, like I experience what you're saying. We experience this through our kids as well. They're mixed kids, and we get the fetishization of people's reactions. Fetishizing our mixed children, and it sounds like it's in a positive light. Like I'm with them in some regard. Like I do. Like I have the cutest kids in the world. Like
they are cute.
I'm not going to argue 100%. With stranger who's saying that. Like I'm not going to argue that. But I think listeners, what I want them to hear right now is to be willing to interrogate why you feel a certain way about mixed children or children of color. That's just, I think that's helpful too. And it's not a condemning thing. It's just like think about what is going on inside that makes you have these thoughts or feelings towards.
I remember in college, I remember hearing some friends I was hanging out with, some girls say, "Oh, black kids are just so cute. I love black kids. They're so cute." And I'm like, I said this, I was like, "Yeah, until they grow up to be black adults." Like silence, like mic drop, no response. Like obviously I don't mean that, I still think I'm pretty cute, but like it calls out the hypocrisy. Like you want them when they're young, but you don't want them when they're grown, right? And it's that the exotic, the different, the strange, the thing I'm not used to. Like why I think, like you said, I think it's good to interrogate where that comes from, and why do you value what is different in a weird way, and how do we avoid that? So
living in the nuance, man. That's what we're about on here.
I think so too. Yeah.
Which is a weird thing to be all about the nuance when so often we're talking about right and wrong. But anyway, let's get that next question, JM.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. All right. This one says, "Sometimes I see conflicting messages about how to engage these topics. How do I know what to do?" So the example is silence is violence. is a message that's out there.
Yep.
So don't be silent because it's violence. Versus listen, don't speak, listen,
right.
grow, learn, work on yourself. Right. So that feels like, I guess that feels like it's from the same source that we hear both those messages.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So how would you respond? How would you answer this question? Sometimes we hear conflicting messages about how to respond to racism. What do we do? Fix us.
I think it's situational and has everything to do with time. So, and consistency to me. So the masses and collective responses to things matter to me a lot with some of these things. So I just feel at times where there's a crisis with racial justice happening in our country, which we've all lived through at this point, I remember feeling the weight of silence from communities that I'm a part of or identify with on issues that to me should be something that would be an innate thing to speak up about. Yeah. So to me, that is literally made complete sense to me when I know people like to say it's like a cutesy little hashtag, but like the silence is violence thing, to me, that was adding up perfectly. Like the math was adding up. I'm like, people not speaking up about this, people that could have the most impact if they spoke up about this, not speaking up, is the result is people are dying. And there's a disconnect between the level of issues that people would speak up on. And so to me, the whole, I'm going to not say anything, and that's me listening when I know that they have the capacity and enough knowledge to say something. Yes. To me, that falls on my deaf ears. I'm like, no, that's willful ignorance. That's passivity. And that's a time where you need to be speaking up, and literally we're here at this moment because of this kind of silence.
Wow. That's well said.
Yeah, and so on the other side, I don't think you should clumsily engage with something. Yeah. And especially, if you have a big platform or something. People with big platforms have, a different kind of, I'm not going to feel sorry for them, but have a different thing to consider, because it's, you don't want to, you're considered an expert for better, for worse, if you speak up about something. And so if you clumsily do it, it could have really bad ramifications. And
it's true.
If you don't say anything, you could also be called out for not saying anything. So I get that. And everyone deals with that to some extent and has been dealing with that to some extent. To me, my mind with that question just goes to, okay, someone needs to speak up in the absence of these people who aren't speaking up, who should be speaking up. Yeah. But also there's other times where it's like, there's, people who it's like, okay, we're covered. I don't, you're doing too much. Don't speak up here. So I think, again, like all these questions come back to kind of where your heart's at for me. Like, why are you speaking up, or why are you not speaking up? And who's being affected by either or.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I think what you have said, what you just said, is so well. I was thinking more on the silence. Violence isn't the only reason someone will be silent, right? Sometimes you don't know what to say. Sometimes you're praying over the issue, really concerned about it. Sometimes you don't have words. You're not good at speaking or writing, but what you do have, you're giving to it, right? You're giving to whatever it is. So you're acting in other ways, right? So that's where, when I hear that, that's where I go. But what you've just said and brought to my attention, I think it's good. Like, if you're going to be in some position where you are taking responsibility for care over somebody, and they're a person of color, and then the country comes along, people are racist, and they attack somebody who is of that ethnicity or race of that same person of color, right? And then you do nothing, you say nothing, against it. You do nothing to care for them. You don't reach out. You're just silent about it. And you just keep rolling as if business as usual. Then I think you're not fulfilling your responsibility to care for somebody. I don't know how you can say that you're a leader if you're not caring for people. And I think my best example would be in a congregation, like in a pastoral role. Like if you're a pastor and you're not caring for Black and brown people who are hurting in your congregation, you're just silent and you move on, business as usual. I don't think you can say that you are leading them, that you are caring for them.
Absolutely.
I think you're failing at your job. So I think in that sense, maybe silence isn't violence, but it sure isn't caring for them. It sure isn't, helping them. And it might be complicity, right? We don't know at that point. So it's a damaging mystery rather than, clarity.
Yeah. And you can say something and not have it all figured out. Again,
it's true.
You can tell, like I've heard plenty of people speak up who don't know what they're talking about. But if you're upfront about that, that's so different than speaking as if, I've heard pastors speak up about stuff that they shouldn't speak up about, and they would blame it on, well, my arm was being twisted. Like I had to say something. It's like, you know how to, your job is shepherding your congregation. Like, how to speak about something and just say, look, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fair to say
repent,
I don't know.
confess. Like I should know more. I don't know exactly what to do, but here's where we're at.
Those
church.
things are valid. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think consistency is also key. I think I mentioned that earlier. So, I mean, we can even be specific. Maybe we're beating around the bush a little bit. Like in, 2020 when, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery killed by the police. I care about consistency, and that's kind of the point I'm making. So, like, I don't want you to be silent if you're about those stories. But if you're silent because you don't know what to say, don't then decide to say something when rioting's happening, or and go off on a monologue about how violence is wrong. Like just
about the response to the evil that happened.
Don't do that. Like if you don't know what you should say, then let's be consistent. Don't suddenly know. Don't suddenly have the words when something like that happens. So just remain silent and keep learning if that's where you were at in the first place. So
that's good.
Be faithful to put it out there if you got the words, but if you don't, you don't. But be consistent.
Yeah. So in my role as my job as a cross-cultural training coordinator, we often help people evaluate their lives. And there's this one question, this evaluation question that I find helpful. It's about churches. It's about someone's church. And the question is, if your church was around during the civil rights era, what side were they on? Where did they stand? What did they do? And if they weren't around, how do you think they would have responded? And I love that question. And I've loved that question before 2020 happened, before the protests that we all saw throughout the world in the wake of George Floyd, but also Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. But I think now, because we have lived through 2020 and that civil rights explosion and the new civil rights movement, I feel like we can ask, we have a picture of how our churches would have responded in Dr. King's day, with SNCC or with the sit-ins, with the bus boycotts. Like we have a picture of how those churches would have responded. And the question needs to be asked, like, how did your church respond? And that's probably how they would have responded back then too, right? And then what are you going to do about it, right? If your church was apathetic now, they would have been apathetic then. They're going to be apathetic in the future. Do you value people's lives? Do you value racism ending? Do you value caring for people made in the image of God? And then what are you going to do about it? So, so that's a question that I like.
Absolutely. We got time for a couple more.
We do. Yeah. I'm starting to think, how did we get here? That got real. How did we get to this point?
Hey, it's what we do.
It's what we do. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, that was good. I have another story along those lines, though. My, I think my sister wouldn't mind me sharing this. I have a lot of sisters, so you'll never know which one. But in a class she had once, her professor kept confusing her with the only other black student in this class, in this college class. And so that in itself, if I call it racism, people are going to be like, "Oh, she's not a Klansman. Like, it's not racism." But yeah, that's some internalized lack of caring about people who are different, right? If she truly cared about the identity of my sister and the other black student, then she would know them by name and wouldn't get confused. She would like focus on their facial features because she valued them as people. She didn't confuse anybody else's name, just them, right? So if she didn't have whatever that internalized mess was, then she would know who they are, right? So if you constantly confuse people of color with other people who are of a similar ethnic background, then you really need to, investigate what's going on in your life. So that aside, she had a friend, I think a white friend, who really wanted to say something to the professor, but this is one of those moments where it's like, don't say anything because you might say the wrong thing and it won't be helpful. And that's where I think what you were saying strike this in my mind. Like, silence is violence unless you're going to do more violence by whatever you're going to say. You know what I mean? You're going to make it worse. So sometimes sometimes you don't. You really got to be sure. Like, am I going to approach this issue with grace? Like, yes, somebody did something that is racially tinged or just flat out racist. Am I going to approach them with grace? Am I going to be loving in my response and help them see, kindness is better? Would you like to see how this is unkind and come with me? Or am I going to drop the hammer and be like, you were racist, that was wrong, you need to burn, right? I think the second example is not helpful. The first one, if we invite them through kindness to grow, I think that's the better way to go about it. So unless you're going to be kind, maybe don't say anything.
Yeah. Again, I think it's important to pick out how much all of this always comes back to the heart or even intention of where something is coming from. Because to be fair, I think it is fair to say, like, I remember being mistaked, like in high school for my friends' names, but me and my best friend growing up, shout out Daniel Miller. Our teachers would get us confused sometimes, not because we look alike, but we're with each other all the time. We both have, classic D names. And so I think that's, I think, again, I'm going to interrogate that too, because there are groups of people I get mixed up often too, doing like college ministry. Yeah. We knowing students that, just certain demographic, like they, regardless of race, like look alike. And we have kind of a running joke with some of our people I work with. It's like, well, this person looks like this. I'm like, that sounds like all the people in that whole demographic to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think it's kind of both. But to your sister's story, like, to me, that I'm not trying to minimize that, because that is a very real and normal story that plenty of people of color have. That's like, okay, there's two of us. You clearly see us as a monolith, and like,
yeah.
The black kids.
It also matters like how, like, frequency of seeing them. Like, do you work with them every day? Do you see them 3 times a week? Like, at that point, you should begin to figure out the difference. Find out something. Like, people have an easier time telling twins apart in their own, culture than two people who aren't twins in another one. Like,
one of my favorite things I
learned.
Have you seen that video with the news anchor that gets ripped apart by Samuel L. Jackson?
I don't know.
Anyway, he's getting interviewed on. It's not a famous news person. He's like he is. I don't know what the interview was about. It almost looked like a local show. Anyway, he says, "Okay."
What did he say? Something Morgan Freeman was in or something?
No,
Who's he confusing?
It wasn't that bad. It was Lawrence Fishburne.
Oh,
so his defense, they do look similar. But
I'm looking him up right now.
He says he just completely addresses him as if he was in, I don't know. I think he might have like made a reference to like The Matrix or something like that. And Samuel Jackson, he goes off. He's like, what are you talking about? He's
I can see that. Oh yeah, I can see why.
He's like, I'm not that guy.
Similar age, like they similar career movies, type action movies. I could see that a little bit.
Anyway, I'm not trying to bail the news anchor out.
That was pretty bad. Though.
That was just so funny. I'm like,
that's pretty bad. Lawrence
Fishburne. It's literally your job to know this right now, and you.
Right. Right, and then interview
to get it that wrong. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, that is terrible.
It made me think of that story.
Yeah, I'd love to see a movie with either of those guys in it though. Love them both.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's funny. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to do one more, or should we call it?
Yeah, let's do one more.
All right.
Okay, we'll end on this one. Here we go. One criticism I've heard is that people are ignorant because they don't have people of color in their circles. But it feels weird to just try and befriend people of color because they are people of color. What are some ways to begin to interact with people who aren't exactly like you without making it a weird project? Which wouldn't that essentially be tokenism?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question.
It is.
So it makes me think of Pokemon. Got to catch them all, right?
Yeah.
Gotta get one of each kind in your friend group. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. So again, I think tokenism is a hard issue again.
Yeah.
Like you can sense when it's tokenism. And I know that doesn't answer this person's question, but my advice is not super eloquent, and it's just go for it. And you might mess up, but I think even asking the question hopefully is helpful to somebody that asks this, because I think saying it out loud should help to not go about it in a way that is pure tokenism, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So like being aware that you could make this mistake of like a collector's mindset of people of color, like, ooh, I need a black friend. Be my black friend, right?
You shouldn't want to check a box.
You don't want to do that can help you avoid doing that, right?
Yeah.
Only being friends with someone because they're black or because they're Korean.
I think two things. Okay, so I think one thing is approach everybody with complete dignity and the same amount of dignity, wanting to embrace everybody to be their full self.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that is one. And two, I think you should be asking a different question. And I think not enough people I don't think enough people, especially our white friends, feel a heavy enough weight that they are missing something in their life without having people of color in their life or more people of color in their life. Like I think that the nature is that the fact that the nature is how can I avoid tokenism is kind of the wrong place to start. I get that sometimes you have to start there, but I think to not always a fault of their own, but that is the wrong place to be in the first place.
Yeah.
So I don't exactly always know how to get out of it, but I think that you've got to start to be driven by, man, I am missing out. Like in a way of you're just driven to get to know people because they're people, not, oh man, I'm missing out on like a good time or something, or like understanding another fun, trendy culture. No, like, man, my life is not as full as it could be knowing only people that will look like me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good answer to the first part. I also like the second part, like what are some ways to begin to interact with people who aren't exactly like you without making it a weird project? Like, I think the reality is like people of color are minorities, right? So not everyone gets access to us, right? You know, we can't be everyone's best friend. You can't come to us with all your questions.
Although, have you seen that mixed people of mixed race or identify as mixed is soon to be not the minority, soon to be the majority?
Really?
It's on the uprise or on the rise.
Wild.
Yeah, anyway.
That's cool.
Another time.
Cool. So our kids, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think like, I don't know, like listen to a podcast, like Racially Speaking, support it, you know, tell your friends about it. Can't be your friends, but you can listen to us have conversations and maybe you'll get some of your questions asked if you asked us your questions online. Like, you know, follow DM Fipsy on Instagram and, you know, subscribe and see what he's talking about. And then I think there are ways that you can engage with the cultures of others without being best friends in this era that we live in, right? Yeah. Social media is a great way to get it. There's lots of books. I mean, people just keep cranking out books, specifically about race, ethnicity, and culture. But then I was meeting with a guy who is from India, and I can't remember the city that he's from. But I asked him, I was like, what is a book that you recommend, fiction or not, that would help me understand more of the culture that you come from? Just because I think I'll spend more time with them and get to know them more. And so he gave me a fiction book that I'm going to try and read and see what I pick up. So like ask people, you know, the culture you're coming from. I'd like to get to know more about it. What are some resources, 1 or 2 resources that can help me begin to get a bigger picture of the culture you're coming from? So
absolutely,
these are things that are in our hands, you know, ask questions, research, read books, watch movies, listen. So,
yeah. Shout out to DMs and email. I'll speak for myself, but so I think, I don't want to say my least favorite part because that sounds too negative, but John Mark, we love doing the podcast.
We do.
We love diving into these topics, engaging with listeners and being hopefully a helpful and somewhat entertaining resource. I think maybe the least favorite part is promoting even what little bit we do on social media. But I will say what makes it all worth it is when people engage. Like I love, if anyone's listening and wants to engage more, is like nervous to, or thinks it's going to be awkward to shoot us an email or send a DM with questions. Like you just heard questions we asked from people that have asked questions. Like I love that. I live for that. Like I love engaging with people. We're accessible. I don't know if you guys realize we are not a big deal. We will answer a DM. So like my DMs aren't filling up that I'm like, oh, I can't answer them. Like I answer them.
I haven't gotten any. So
there we go. Hey, John at DM Walker.
Yeah,
Walker.
It's
John
Walker.JohnMark on Instagram. So follow.
Have you thought about changing that to the Social Justice Cowboy yet?
You know, I'll look into it and see if somebody's taken that yet.
How about once if you hit 10 DMs, you got to change it.
10 DMs. Okay.
Yeah.
To be honest, though, I got to figure out how to get to my DMs. I'm really new to this Instagram game. I know that makes me sound real old. If you DM me on Twitter, I can get there much faster. But
okay.
I'm trying to get away from Twitter. It's a very hateful place. Yeah.
I'm not.
So I'm leaning towards.
I'll do
Instagram
the screenshots of the Twitter sometimes. Listen, the Twitter sometimes to get them on Instagram, but otherwise, I don't mess with Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter. Yeah, it doesn't make me feel good.
But seriously, so we follow us on social media. We don't have the time and energy yet to put out to invest in a handle for the podcast. We've got a nice little hashtag. But follow us separately on social media. But we do have a newly established, thank you, John Mark, email, raciallyspeakingpod@gmail.com. Shoot us an email with your questions. We would love to hear from you and answer more questions more regularly.
Yeah. So before we go, there's something I'm excited about. And speaking of Instagram, I posted about it, and I think you saw it. I got this 3-movie collection of Jordan Peele. It's Nope, Us, and Get Out, and I'm just so excited. It came yesterday.
Did you just order it or someone send it to you?
I ordered it. I pre-ordered it and I forgot that I pre-ordered it. So it's like I got myself a gift that I didn't expect to come in the mail yesterday.
Which three movies again? I can't see it in the screen.
So yeah, let me show you. Okay. Yeah. It's Nope,
Get Out,
Us, and Get Out. So there's only 3 movies that he has right now, but
yes.
And Nope is the most recent one, and I loved it. I thought it was great. It's an alien movie.
We're gonna end on a shameful note. I never saw Get Out.
It's okay.
Okay, man, you're always so nice when I say that. I feel bad about not seeing certain things, and I feel
Don't feel bad. I'll share my password with you, and then you can watch it.
Okay, I feel like that one is a must. I need to see it. I don't know why I didn't see it. I loved Us. That was man.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't miss. He does a good job. And have you seen Nope?
I didn't get around to see Nope.
Right. Yeah, it's fun. You'll like it. It's okay. I mean, it's streaming everywhere now, so you can, pay for it and watch it. But yeah. Anyway, I just I'm excited about it. So I started watching Get Out yesterday. I didn't get very far in it, but
loved
I'm just
Us.
excited about it.
Loved Jordan Peele. Shout out Key and Peele.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're killing it, both of them.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are.
All right, y'all. Thank you guys so much, as always, for listening. Again, shoot us an email. Shoot us a DM, especially John Marks. He'll find it eventually and hopefully change his handle to the Social Justice Cowboy. But we really appreciate you guys. The music you're hearing right now is done, of course, by our guy, Dylan Dent. Our artwork was created by Ashley Bush. And we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
The nightmare might scare you, no worse than reality. They hunt you by day, R.I.P. Ahmaud Arbery. Everybody got a time, but that's less than comforting. I hope I'm alive by the time they choose to comfort me. Mosquitoes in the vein, or leeches on my soul. This money on my mind is a fracture in my bones. You get crippled by continuing existence like a ghost. And they wonder why we drink, and they wonder why we smoke, and they wonder why we think that everything's a joke. I'm shocked that we can sleep, must be the thought of letting go.